Damian Lillard and Steph Curry put on a show in Milwaukee, but unfortunately, the Bucks didn't walk out with the win. There were two, arguably three areas that really cost the Bucks this game. We'll break down those key areas, plus Jon Horst's first comment since the trade deadline on the other side of the intro.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked On Network, plus co-host of the Technical File podcast. Just me, who's running solo today, but I do appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. Plus, you can catch us in newsletter form. We have the Locked On Bucks daily newsletter. Head over to lockedondaily.com to sign up and start your day with the free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Now, as I mentioned, am running solo today. So I've done this before, well, one time before, but I'm going to do it again. Since I'm running solo, I do have some clips from the post-game pressers from head coach Doc Rivers, from Damian Lillard, as well as from Kyle Kuzma. So I'm going to be playing some clips from those three individuals throughout the course of this episode, and also just giving my take on this game because the Bucks lost. The Bucks lost, y'all. 125-111 to the Warriors at Fiserv Forum on the second night of a back-to-back. Steph versus Dame is what you really tune in for in a game like this. And both of them came through and put up some big numbers, 38 points apiece for both of those Hall of Fame all-star point guards. And before diving into the game itself, I just want to take a quick second and give the two of them their flowers because Steph's 15 years into this thing. Dame is 12 years into this. Two of the greatest shooters that this game has ever seen. And we know that the NBA, sports in general, can be really fickle where sometimes you don't realize it's your last time watching a certain matchup. And I just always have a level of appreciation from seeing the greats play the game and play against each other, especially when it's a positional matchup like Steph Curry and Damian Lillard, two guys who have quite the history, given Dame's history in Portland as a trailblazer in the Western Conference, seeing Steph on a more regular basis than he does now. So just wanted to give those two their flowers. When you get a chance to watch greatness and see players who are at the top of their game do this year in and year out, it's always worth just taking that second of appreciation of what you're seeing. And one thing that I saw in this game, a key turning point in this game, start of the fourth quarter, Dame's on the bench, right? And the Bucks get the score to a 2-point game. It's 92-90 after Gary Trent Jr. hits a step back midi, but then Quentin Post back-to-back threes. He stretched that score out to 98-90. When Dame got back into the game, it was 99-92 Warriors with a little bit over 8 minutes to go in the game. Some Bucks turnovers, some missed shots. Steph hit a three, then Post hit another three. And the next thing you know, it's 104-94 Warriors lead with about a little under 7 minutes to go. And the Bucks really weren't able to make up that deficit at that point in the game. And the story of the game as to why the Bucks lost this one, in my opinion, the main two areas, turnovers being one and rebounding being the second one. When you look at the turnovers, the Bucks in this game against the Warriors, they had 20 turnovers that led to 31 Warriors points. It's too many, far too many. And when you look at the boards, the Warriors came, they did their thing on the glass, 15 offensive rebounds to 5 offensive rebounds for the Bucks. We were giving the Bucks kudos last night about their effort on the glass against the Sixers. And tonight against the Warriors, they just had the upper hand there. The Warriors being able to crash the glass so effectively led to them putting up 93 shots in this game in comparison to the Bucks 76. And me and Frank have talked about this in past games. It's something that Frank himself normally really highlights. It's just the number of possessions. You're in a bad math problem at that point when the other team can take that many more shots. I believe that's 17, if my quick math is correct there, 17 more shots than you during the course of a game. It's hard to overcome. Of course, Doc Rivers was asked about the turnovers from the Bucks. And Another part that he highlighted was just the tired legs. Second night of a back-to-back, but he also highlighted what the Warriors did well to force the Bucks into these disadvantageous situations.
I give them credit. I thought their switching affected us tonight. I didn't think we ran a lot of good offense. I thought we ran a lot of ISO and attack. We spread the floor, but our turnover, you can't turn the ball over against them. Also thought all the loose balls, they won the 50-50 game. The first half, I think Jimmy Butler got a ball that was laying on the floor. He was on the floor and still got to it first. But I thought overall our guys fought. They hung in there. I thought we were playing on tired legs. You could see that. The only one that looked fresh was Dame in a lot of ways. He was aggressive, but it was a combination of 2 weeks home, 2 weeks, and now we leave back tomorrow. So we knew this was coming. Not a lot we can do about it. Hopefully we can muster up enough energy and rest and play this last game before we get our real rest.
Him crediting Dame for being one of the guys who had the energy is noteworthy, given the fact that Dame played 44 minutes against the Sixers last night. Followed that up, second night of a back-to-back against the Warriors. He comes out and he plays 39 minutes. But Doc highlighting that the Warriors were switching a lot and how that hurt the Bucks offense, I think is a really important part, because when you're playing against teams that switch a lot and when they do it effectively, it can be difficult to score because you're trying to attack mismatches and you're trying to keep the defenders off balance. But if you're not executing the little things well, ghost screens, slips, etc., it's going to be hard to get those guys off their square. And it seemed like tonight against the Warriors, the Bucks were really trying to beat them with a lot more ISO ball and not necessarily with their ball movement. You saw the ball movement last night against the Sixers where it's moving from hand to hand. It's hard for the defenders to keep up with what's going on at that point. And that wasn't the case tonight. But again, you give credit to the Warriors and the defense that they were playing because it did make it difficult on the Bucks to execute. That's something that Dame highlighted in his post-game comments as well.
I think when teams switch, they kind of make you more stagnant, get you into playing more ISOs, and it's usually harder to get in your actions when teams just switch everything, because it kind of takes the first, second, third option out of it when they guard like that. And I thought we didn't execute well enough out of that. The screening, slipping, getting the guys involved that we wanted to get involved. We didn't do it consistent enough, and then it was still a close game. Loose balls, they got to them. We allowed them to get off threes. They got a lot of shooters, and I thought they separated themselves getting threes off second opportunities. And then, obviously, the turnovers. I felt like I had more turnovers than I ever had in a game today. So, you're not going to win a game not valuing every possession against a team that's shooting the ball like that.
He's not wrong about that. He's not wrong about that. And Dame having 10 of the Bucks' 20 turnovers, again, it's hard to win a game that way when you're not taking care of the ball enough, especially when it's coming from a guy who has the offensive load that Dame has when Giannis is not playing in the game. The challenge for him is always a difficult one because he has to be, as Dame or Doc said yesterday, an aggressive playmaker and an aggressive scorer. And finding that balance can always be difficult. Dame still had 7 assists. He was trying to spray the ball around, but didn't take care of the ball enough. And I don't think it was just because of the Warriors switching. I think part of it had to do with how the Bucks were attacking the switches and the pace that they were playing at on offense as well. Want to highlight that and what that means a little bit more, as well as get Kuz's opinion on it and talk about another area of the game where I thought it kind of bit the Bucks in the butt in this game against the Warriors as part of the reason why they weren't able to come up with the dub. So we'll talk more about that right after this. Running a small business means that you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone number, that becomes your business phone. And before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. Plus, as your team grows, it becomes almost impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. And that is where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer, and it integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, ain't no problem, because automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring that you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, Open Phone is offering 20% off of your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And you'll get 20% off for 6 months. Openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Another area for the Bucks, as I mentioned, talked about the turnovers, talked about the boarding, and I thought honestly some of the passes were a little lazy for the Bucks as well during the game. And Kuzma was asked about the why behind the turnovers tonight. He highlighted the defense as well, which you have to. You have to give them some credit on it. But he also talked about the Bucks were just a little too loose with the ball at times.
Definitely a little bit of both. I think that we were a little loose. You know, a couple, if not a lot of them, were live ball turnovers, some deflections, run-outs. And I think that's where you see, their points off of turnovers really affected us. Offensive rebounds, we didn't do a good job of that. And they got a lot more than us, 15-5. And, they probably shot at least, 15 plus more shots than us. So tough to win when you have those type of deficits. So
it is tough to win when you have those type of deficits. It's even tougher to win with those deficits when you're without your best player. I've mentioned it before. This is a Bucks team that the room for error is not great. And when you're down your best player, when Giannis is not on the court, that becomes even tighter. Like, small things become big things when you don't have your best players available. And that was the case for the Bucks throughout this one. In addition to those turnovers and the rebounds, as I mentioned, there was a third area where I thought like the Bucks kind of struggled here. And that's also part of why they lost this game to the Warriors. And it came down to the 3-point shooting. Now, you might look at it and just think it was the shooting percentage, which was a problem. This is the Bucks team that generally shoots about 39% from three on the season. Tonight, they shot about 30% from three, so just not enough of those shots going in. But the flip side to that is that in this game, the Warriors also did not shoot that well from three, so the 3-point disparity wasn't super great for the Bucks in regards to the amount of made 3-point buckets in this game. The Warriors made 13, the Bucks made 10. But the difference here is that the Warriors were 13 of 45 from the field, and the Bucks were 10 of 33 from the field. I wish the Bucks were able to get more threes up throughout this game. And I do not think it's an accident that the Bucks were only able to get up 33 threes in this game. A lot of three talk here. The third thing, 33 NMs, threes, 30%, a lot of threes here. But again, the Warriors did a great job with their switching and running the Bucks off of the line and just not giving them a lot of room to operate. When the Bucks do not have Giannis, they are going to put up more threes than they normally do. We saw that over the last 2 games here with them getting 50 plus threes in 2 consecutive games. Shout out to Taurean Prince. He went 5 of 7 from 3. So TP alone, he knocked down half of the Bucks threes in this game. Dame was 3 of 8 from 3. The only 2 Bucks to make a 3 were Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green. Gary Trent Jr. went 1 of 5. AJ Green went 1 of 4. Bucks didn't get a lot of production from the bench tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the bigs, Bobby off the bench, as well as Brooke in the starting lineup. But 33 3-point attempts, it's just not enough. It's not enough. Word to Kendrick. It's not enough. Few solid games, but this is not enough for the Bucks here. And Kuz was also asked about the 3-point shooting from the Bucks tonight, and he had a very similar takeaway.
Yeah, that's not enough for sure. And, modern NBA, I think that was probably their game plan. You could tell a lot of times, they wanted us to score in the 2-point range. And, it affected us. Obviously, if you watched our past couple games, or past 2 games at least, we shot the ball really well from 3, especially last night as well. And they took that away, making us play a lot in 2-point range. And, the ball was really stagnant tonight. We didn't necessarily move it as well as we have for stretches. So.
Definitely agree with that, Kuz. And Kuz had a pretty decent game from the field as well. Shot 6 of 9 from the field. He was big at the free throw line, 9 of 13. A lot of fouls called in this game. The Bucks shot 34 free throws. The Warriors shot 38 free throws. A lot of free throws in this game. The Warriors were +5 at the free throw line, but again, you want to see the Bucks get up more 3-point shots, especially given that they're a team that tends to knock them down at a better clip. And I mentioned how Taurean Prince had a good game, mentioned how Dame, was part of the highlights, a great offensive game from a scoring perspective with his 38 on pretty efficient scoring. At the turnovers, on the other hand, though, mentioned Taurean Prince and his threes. Kuz had a pretty good game for the Bucks as well, doing a lot of his damage at the free throw line, but not the best games from Brooke. I kind of combined their names, from Brooke or Bobby tonight. You didn't get much offensively from either guy. Brooke gave you 6 points on 4 shots. Bobby Portis gave you 7 points on 11 shots. And we've heard so far through the episode with Doc and Dame and Kuz talking about how to play switches. I mentioned some things with that. And another thing with the switching, you're looking for the mismatch. And I did not like Bobby Portis settling for post looks with Jimmy and Draymond being the guys to defend him. The Bobby post touches are a point of contention throughout Bucks Nation, and I understand it. I don't tend to mind them when they are on mismatches because he has a pretty nice touch, and Bobby can get you some buckets that way. But if the defender is Jimmy or Draymond or something like that, try to find a better shot on the floor is what I would say to that. And with the performance of those 2 bigs, I'm low-key surprised we haven't seen Sims, especially with this being the second night of a back-to-back. I expected for Doc to go deeper into his rotation. On the second night of a back-to-back, Doc normally likes to play 9 guys. We saw him go 11 deep in this one. We saw Doc turn to Kevin Porter Jr. We saw Pat Connaughton for a bit. Ryan Rollins, he played only 7 minutes tonight after playing 4 yesterday against the Sixers. And the rotation surprised me a bit. Doc mentioned the challenges that comes as a coach when you're bringing in new players at the deadline and how that's been affecting the rotations as he's trying to get that together for this new look Bucks team.
It's tough because it's it's easy with one guy, but we have multiple guys that we're trying to squeeze in. And we got to find out because we have guys here that we like. So we have to find out in these next 30 games or whatever we have left. Is it 30? I don't know what it is. What our rotations will be. So it's important.
Doc was right. It is 30 games left. One more game before the All-Star break and then 29 after the break. But have to figure it out. Really surprised not to see Sims, especially against a Warriors team that plays a little bit smaller. Thought that could have been a really good time to get him run. But on the flip side, we saw the Milwaukee Buck debut for Kevin Porter Jr., KPJ. And I thought that his minutes were an adventure. They were an adventure at times with Kevin out there. You saw some flashes of some good things. Doc mentioned that with Kevin Porter Jr., he was being intentional with his minutes, and he did highlight some of the things that he thinks that Porter Jr. will be able to bring to the Bucks rotation.
KPJ, what did you learn about?
That was on purpose. I just wanted KPJ to play, honestly, and I felt like we got to squeeze him in here. Got to squeeze him in probably again the Minnesota game just so he can get his legs under him. What I did like defensively, you can see he can be really good for us, and I think he'll be really good off with the ball as far as running our stuff.
We're going to see. We're going to see. The defense did flash a bit for me with Kevin Porter Jr. I mean, he checks into the game, and his first assignment is checking Steph Curry. And you saw him, again, the youth athleticism, being able to move his feet on offense. You saw him hit a nice little, mid-range jumper off of a step back. But the next possession down, a lot of dribbling, gets the ball stolen. It was the give and take with Kevin Porter Jr. in this game. So continue to see how it looks for him. But with Doc being intentional about getting Kevin Porter Jr. in the rotation, I would like to see that same intentionality with Sims. And that's not me saying that I think Sims is going to come out here and be a guy who's going to play, 20, 25 minutes consistently, take some other big spot in the rotation completely. And I also understand that with Kuz there, who can play the 4, Doc technically still does have a 3-man big rotation with Giannis out if you're alternating between Brooke and Bobby and Kuz. But in a game like tonight where you're seeing that things just aren't working as well with Brooke or with Bobby, I don't understand why you don't throw Sims out there just to see, especially again, second night of a back-to-back. No Giannis in the lineup. Doc doesn't typically go 4 deep with the bigs, but if we're trying to be intentional about finding minutes for guys and seeing what the new guys can provide, this felt like it could have been a really good place for Doc to do that. So hopefully we get a chance to see Sims a little bit before the All-Star break. If not, the watch will remain on to see all 3 new Bucks additions take the court. But in addition to this game tonight, we also heard from Jon Horst for the first time since the trade deadline, and he talked a little bit about the whys behind what he was doing. And I want to highlight some of those whys and how it's going to set the tone for this team for the rest of the season. So we'll get into that a little bit after this. Now, when it comes to the Jon Horst comments, unfortunately, I do not have video footage of it. So it's going to be a lot of me reading his quotes. But I found it really interesting about how he was approaching this, because Jon Horst has a relationship with Chris Middleton. We all, Bucks fans, have a relationship with Chris Middleton. And there has been a lot of conversation around, was this the right move to make? Can Kuzma come in and give you what Chris Middleton was giving you? And ultimately, it's not even about Kyle Kuzma or Jericho Sims or Kevin Porter Jr. coming in and replacing what Chris Middleton did with DeLon Wright. Well, DeLon Wright didn't really get many rotations, but you know what I mean. It's not about these new guys coming in to replace exactly what was sent out the door. It's more so a pivot to see if the Bucks can be deeper in other ways and play in other ways. So here are some of what Jon Horst said in regards to the Chris Middleton trade. He said, quote, "It has to be the hardest thing transactionally that I've ever done. From the human side of it, the roster side of it, the culture of the team, our community. I'm incredibly close with Chris personally, his family. I love them. I probably have more Middleton jerseys in my house than anything, and will still have more Middleton jerseys in my house than anything. So not comfortable with it. This isn't a Chris or a Kyle comparison, although that's the easy thing to do. It's the team before the trade deadline and the team after the trade deadline. We felt like in totality, we positioned ourselves to have a better run this year. And in a really weird way, that doesn't do anything to diminish the multi-time, 3-time All-Star, Olympian, NBA champion, pillar in the community, everything that Chris Middleton was for this franchise for over a decade. So not comfortable with it still, never will be comfortable with it, but do believe that we did the right thing for the right reasons and hopefully in the right way. I just think collectively, I think we're deeper in the spots we needed to be deeper. This gave us an opportunity to diversify a little bit, to kind of put money and talent and roster spots in other places where I thought we needed help. End quote. Jon Horst said a lot more throughout the course of that conversation that he had with the media tonight ahead of the Warriors game about the why behind the trade. And I think his point about, again, they're not here to replace Chris. They're here to give a different look. And this trade is going to have a bit of an incomplete grade until we see how it all looks once Giannis hits the court alongside of them. Because as I've said, this is a Bucks team now that is a duo. It is a team that is really built around Chris. I'm sorry, not Chris. That's nostalgia. Memory talking right there. Built around Dame and built around Giannis. I don't think it's another big 3 situation for the Bucks. I think it's a big 2, a big duo with the supporting cast is going to have to come through for them. And what Kuz allows you to do is have some more defensive versatility It could help unlock some small ball lineups. We saw the rebounding look really good against the Sixers, not as much against the Warriors here tonight, but the possibilities are there. Kevin Porter Jr., what he brings with his athleticism in the backcourt, really curious about his place and his role in the rotation. If he's going to be someone that jumps Ryan Rollins, if he's someone who they brought in because they don't plan to actually convert that Rollins contract into a standard contract this season, it's really going to be interesting to see what continues to happen with Rollins this season, as well as Kevin Porter Jr. So it's just that piece of it, of giving the Bucks a different look at it. And I'm not mad at different because, again, I don't think that this different drastically improved this team necessarily, nor did it drastically worsen the team. Like, at worst, I think this is a lateral movement. I saw somebody in the Locked On Bucks comments mention that last week. Time has been moving in a really weird way since the trade deadline. But I saw someone mention them, like, I could not agree more. Like, at worst, I think this was a lateral move for the Bucks, but we'll see. We won't really know until we can see this team finally put it together. And after the Bucks lost to the Thunder, when they had all of the main guys sitting out, when Dame was out, Giannis was out, Brooke was out, Chris was out, Bobby was out, the top 5 scorers were out. We saw the young guys play. We talked about their development, what we saw from them. And then we just looked ahead and said, at this time here, the Bucks have 5 more games until the All-Star break. They have now played 4 of those games, and they're 2-2 over this stretch that I just highlighted. They went to Charlotte and they won. They hosted the Sixers at home. They won. They played the Hawks in Atlanta. They lost. Played the Warriors here at home in Milwaukee, and they lost. And their last game before the break now is going to be in Minnesota against the Timberwolves. So they're going to be heading into Minnesota with a 28-24 record. They're 5th in the East. The Pistons are behind them, like 2 games behind the Bucks, so they're on their heels as well. 30 games to go, 29 games after the All-Star break. Time is starting to get short for this team to start putting things together before the playoffs start. And you could see it a bit in the game against the Warriors tonight, where some of it was just unfamiliarity with some of the guys on the court, with some of the passes that were off. Some of it was, did not expect you to be there, or I thought you were going to move in this way. So just getting that chemistry together is going to be really important for this group down the stretch. And they're starting to build some now, but it's going to change once Giannis hits the court. So my hope for this team as they approach the All-Star break, hit All-Star, it rejuvenates the team. They're able to get some rest. I know Dame's going to be in the All-Star festivities. Andre Jackson Jr. is in the dunk contest. But for Dame, a guy who has put a lot of minutes on here heading into the break, I hope that the All-Star break for him, he plays a bit during the game, no additional injuries along the way. And they can get ready for this last stretch run, because it's going to be important to try to get as many games with these guys as possible for them to continue to build that chemistry and understand where they're going to be at on the court. It's going to be an interesting ride here to finish out the season, but make sure you keep it locked in the Locked On Bucks. If you have not yet already, sign up for the free daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. We'll be back with more Locked On Bucks tomorrow, talking to Justin, probably talking a bit more about the Horst comments, because as I mentioned, there was a lot more that Jon Horst mentioned during his time talking to the media about his decision-making behind the moves, as well as looking ahead to the last game before the All-Star break. And of course, here on the channel, we will be previewing the All-Star game, the events that highlight other Milwaukee Bucks players in it. So there's a lot more great content coming on Locked On Bucks. So make sure y'all keep it locked in. Appreciate y'all. Stay safe. Make sure you come back tomorrow, and go Bucks.